Hello, everybody. Welcome to a new episode of the Dissenter. I'm your host, Ricardo Lopes, and today I'm joined by Dr. Lyle Steadman. He's Professor Emeritus at Arizona State University. Dr. Steadman focuses on religion and kinship, especially their interrelationship and the influence of natural selection on human social and cultural behavior. He has done extensive research among the Hewa, a society in the highlands of Papua New Guinea. So, Dr. Steadman, thank you a lot for taking the time to come on the show. It's a pleasure to everyone.
Well, thank you. Glad to be here.
Okay, so let's start with Hewa. I mean, am I pronouncing the name correctly? Hewa?
Hey, Hewa.
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 Okay.
Yeah. Actually, actually, it's not. They don't use that name.
Oh, so what's the name they use?
Well, tribes in New Guinea, in general, don't have names for themselves, which is an interesting fact.
Oh,
Other peoples, their neighboring tribes, who don't have names for themselves, have names for their neighbors. And so Hewa comes from a neighboring tribe. The word Hewa comes from a neighboring tribe.
that's interesting. So if you ask them who are they, what do they reply?
They they don't have any answer. I mean, after I was there a while,
Yeah.
I was always called by kinship terms.
Hmm.
And so they would say, I'm your father, or I'm your brother, or I'm your, husband, or not husband. They didn't say that, but so on. They use kinship terms always to identify different people, close, and very distant. And in fact, they don't cooperate with anyone who's not a kinsman,
Hmm.
except, I guess, me, who brought in penicillin and
Yeah.
malaria tablets against malaria.
Hmm.
And they saw, and I didn't threaten anybody at all, of course.
Yeah.
And so they accepted me. The first time I went through the Hewa, I had some carriers from an airstrip that was in another tribe. It's called Copiago.
Hmm.
And I got those guys to lead me into the Hewa, but they had never been there before either, but they knew the path. And so we went in, and I got one guy whose mother was a Hewa, and whose father was of this tribe at Copiago. Okay,
Hmm.
and so it was really complicated to talk to the Hewa because I spoke in Pidgin English to a guy that I brought with me who knew Pidgin English and his language at Copiago, and then he would talk to the fellow whose mother was a Hewa. And so it's really complicated when asking a question and going back. But that's the only way I could communicate with the Hewa. But I did bring in aspirin if they if they acted like they were sick at all. I'd give them aspirin. I would give them penicillin on any open wounds and malaria tablets if they shivered, if they were shaking. And so I went through about 10 days or something, walking day after day. And everybody they live in single family dwellings separated by at least a half hour's walk from one another. And so each time at first, we came to we would make noise when we're walking along. We'd talk and so on in the forest, and then nobody would be there except some dogs, but the fires would still be lit in their house, and so then we started to be quiet, and we would surprise them, and then they would shake because they were afraid of us, and then I would give them penicillin on their sores, on their wounds. They always had some sores, and malaria tablets, sometimes aspirin. And then I would say, through this complicated communication system that I had. uh, could I stay with you? I, all of these guys will go back. They'll leave. But could I, by myself, stay with you? And then always be friendly, but say no. No, and house after house. And I thought, how am I ever going to get in there to study them? Most had never seen a white person. Almost no one had ever seen a white person, like me,
Yeah.
And so I finally gave up, and we went back to the airstrip at Copiago. And then after about 3 weeks, I organized another 7 or 8 guys to go in with me, to lead me in there. And everybody again said, no, 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 no. And the last one that we were just about ready to go back, he really liked me. And I asked him if I could stay with him, and he said yes. And so I did. I went, everybody else left, and I stayed. Eventually I lived at his house for 2 years or something like that, more or less. But when I learned the language, it took a long time, I asked him, why did you let me stay here? Why did you welcome me? And he said, because I was dying of malaria. This is when I could talk to them, I learned the language. And he said, I was dying of malaria, and you gave me some pills, those white things, and I got over my malaria. The next day I was better. And so here you come again. Of course, I really love to see you. So I stayed with him. That's how I got in there.
Okay, great. So let me ask you one question. What kind of society are we talking about here? Are they hunter-gatherers or horticulturalists or
okay,
what?
No. When you call it society, they only cooperate and communicate with their kinsmen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Only kinsmen. But they have clan names that they use to identify very distant relatives. And not only of those with their clan name, but their 4 different grandparents' clan names, and sometimes great-grandparent clan names. Mm-hmm. So that's a lot of people that they can identify as kinsmen. And then they always, it's an interesting fact, everybody knows in the Hewa, I took a long time to learn this, everybody knows who's older or younger than everybody else. So they know what kin term to use for them. Mm-hmm. But they only cooperate with kin. All trade goes with between kinsmen, distant kinsmen, And so that's a really fundamental fact. And clans are not groups. And this is one of the problems with the group explanation held by some anthropologists. They can't find the groups that supposedly cause the cultural behavior. They never identify. I mean, I challenge them when they come up with something. And it's interesting, I gave a talk following a talk by a guy, what's his name? I'm old, as you can see, and so I forget names. Names are a problem. The guy that's at ASU that is prominent about group selection. They like group selection. Okay, they want to be with I don't know, science. I guess science. I'm trying to think of his name. God, I can't. Maybe I'll think of it later. Yeah. God, I can't.
If you remember later, we can go back to that.
Yeah. Okay. Good. And so I gave a talk, or he gave a talk and said, finally we found the group that's being selected for that causes cultural behavior. Culture is defined by them by a product of some kind of group. society or something. Tyler said society. A lot of people have said society, but more recently they've been talking about clans. Okay, but then I gave a talk saying clans are not groups. They're only a mechanism. They're names that are transmitted, like our name, like your name, Lopez. Presumably, I assume that if you have a father, his name is Lopez, and his father's Lopez, and his father's Lopez. And when you come across a Lopez in Portugal, you will think, well, I wonder if we're kinsmen or not. And you won't think that if you come across a Steadman or a Smith or something like that. You won't. So, but what's happened, I think, in other words, what I'm saying is clan names are not identifying a group. They're used to identify distant kinsmen apparently in all human societies. You see? So they're not groups. Clans are not groups. And when you take clans away, most people they can't identify any group that causes the culture that they're studying or trying to explain.
So, I mean, with that in mind, what is a society then?
It's just a name that's almost meaningless. Is Portugal a society? Is it with Spain? Obviously, there's close relations with Spain. You used to be one royalty that over the whole area, And look at Great Britain. Great Britain. I mean, there's England. There's Wales. Wales is hardly a real distinct bounded category, but it is. And then there's Scotland. That's a little further away. Then there's Ireland, where they still can speak some Celtic. And there's Northern Ireland that's part of Great Britain. And Southern Ireland is Ireland, which is a separate country. What is a society? It is America, who speaks like the English, more or less. Are we in the same society? Nobody faces these questions when they just pronounce. I mean, Tyler, he defined anthropology as a study of culture, which is a product of society. Nobody knows what a society is. Is the Hewa a society? I worked out a deal where I could bring some Hewa that I studied in contact with Hewa that are, maybe 100 miles away or maybe 200 miles away, something like that. And they wouldn't communicate with one another. They didn't know how to deal with one. They just ignored one another. They both talked to me because, I would speak to them, and I think somebody spoke Pidgin English with those guys. They were at the other end of the Hewa. It was at a big celebration that the Australians would put on for the tourists, and they'd bring in people from all kinds of tribes in New Guinea, and they'd dance. Everybody would dance and so on. But I really was astounded by. I could speak to the Hewa a little bit, but and that I didn't know. I could speak to them, but the other people, my Hewa, let's say, didn't speak to them. They just utterly ignored one another. They didn't know how to deal with one another. So are they in the same society? What do we mean? Are they in the same group in some way? They speak a similar language, but they can't identify one another as kinsmen by these clan names. Okay, anyway, so I'm really talking. Sorry.
No problem. But do they have any basic, what we could call maybe social unit or something like that?
So there is no social unit. There are people called, and this is kind of widespread in New Guinea, big men. It's translated in each language, big man. But that's really a killing group of men that are defending themselves and their wives and their kids against other people, and so it's the leader of a category of males that go kill somebody, That's really a big man, as far as I can tell. Um, there's no they'll share food, but everybody shares food when you come together and people are cooking. They always share food, with anybody in your house and visitors. And other than that, and those aren't permanent because as soon as the big man dies or gets old, somebody will become really it's kind of a war leader, a war leader. That's really all it is, I think. But I don't know of anthropologists ever dealing with that question about New Guinea. Why? What is their function? I think it's just a war leader, probably. I haven't really thought much about this, but I think that's probably true. Anyway, and so other than there's hierarchies are it's all kinship, and presumably that's the reason why they know who's older and younger than them, because then they know who's going to be kind of the leader in that little two people, relationship. So I mean, it's really astounding. Of course, they have no way of they don't have any writing, of course, and they don't have any way of identifying birth dates, year dates. They don't do that at all. But they always know who is older and younger than them, even very distant kinsmen, like my mother's clansman, will be, if I come in contact with them, or if somebody comes in contact with somebody there, then they'll use kinship terms, and that will indicate who's older and who's younger.
But their kinship system, is it primarily based on genetic relatedness or not?
Well, we're touching now on kin selection, and kin selection only goes out to about, well, it hardly goes to first cousins because first cousins have a low chance of sharing a gene. It's 1 in 8. 1 in 8 of your genes will be shared. So that really drops off. So I think the kin selection argument just doesn't work for humans. I don't think it works anywhere. I mean, mammals females care for the young mammals, mamíferos, I think you call them. And they care for the young, and then the young being raised together, sometimes at different years of being born, will cooperate with one another, and they'll really distinguish between those they cooperate with and those they don't. I have some cats, and wow, a strange cat comes up, and wow, all the cats that have been cooperating with one another are really ready to fight, are really ready, to really claw and fight and bite. So, that's the mammal strategy. And what humans have done, I think, is to marriage is very important for humans. Marriage. It does a lot of things. It not only gives a father to children and all of his kinsmen to his children. His children learn all of his kinsmen, and call them properly and behave toward them as kinsmen and so on. And that means not only the father's clan, but his mother's clan and his mother's mother's clan, his grandparents' clans, clans are not groups, and that's really important. And when you take that away, there is no real enduring group that we can use to explain cultural behavior. And this is why I have shifted from culture, which is defined by a product of a group, learned behavior acquired from a group, to traditions. Traditions are, by definition, acquired behavior from ancestors. I mean, look it up in the dictionary. From ancestor to descendant. That's how traditions work. And that means selection, natural selection, works on traditions.
Mm-hmm.
When a tradition helps to leave descendants, it tends to increase in frequency. When it fails to leave descendants, it tends to die out.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's going on. That's culture is a myth said to be a result of a group, and no one ever finds the group. No one finds Boyd and Richardson. Those are the two.
Oh,
Boyd and
yeah, yeah,
Richardson.
yes, I've
Okay,
had them on the show already. So,
oh yeah. No, I noticed that. Yeah. And they give a group explanation. Okay,
mm-hmm.
they're focusing on what they call culture, and they give a group explanation, but they can't. Richardson is the one who gave the talk about we finally found where the group that causes culture, the clan, and then I gave a talk. It was at Santa Barbara, at the Human Behavior and Evolution Society meeting,
Mm-hmm.
and I gave the talk following them, and everybody clapped and roared because I said clans are not groups. I lived with people who use clan names to identify all their relatives, but their mother's clan is as important. Those people identified by their mother's clan name are as important as the people identified by your own clan name.
Mm-hmm.
Just like with you will. I don't know if you follow that Spanish rule of you give not only your father's last name for yourself, but your mother's last name
Mm-hmm.
for her.
Yes, we follow that.
That's right. But when you transmit it to the next generation, your mother's name is lost.
Mm-hmm.
They don't use it explicitly, but all the children learn what that name is. And anybody that they encounter with that name, even in our societies, people will assume if I come across a Steadman, I'll right away, I'll immediately. People have called me, I've been interviewed for a few other things, and people have called me. One person called me, a woman called me from, I think, Alabama or something, Georgia maybe, and saying, I just wondered, my mother's maiden name was Steadman, and I wonder if we're related. That's what she told me. Well, you see, what's happened is that modern religions go beyond kinship.
Mm-hmm.
They say, don't just treat people as, don't just favor your kin, but treat all people of your religion as kinsmen, They almost always use kinship terms, even when they're not kinsmen. Like, look at the Catholic Church. Father, sister, mother, superior, God, it's all brother. They call each other brothers, Wow, they use kinship terms for people who are not really their kinsmen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so even though modern religions have worked hard to overcome kinship, they still use it all the time, And in societies before modern religion, that means the Jewish religion and Christianity and Islam and Hinduism. Hinduism almost surely is a result of the Indo-Europeans, okay, going to India, and they worship their ancestors. I must say that seems to be universal. Ancestor worship seems to be universal. I've written a paper. You might have come across that. I'm sure all these Indo-Europeans that they spread around and went into different areas, they all worship their ancestors. And then, but at some point, they started to convert these Dravidian speakers in India into their religion, their ancestor worship. And now these people are not kinsmen. So now you have kind of fictitious ancestors that everybody has. One of the most important symbols in India is the cow, of course, is the fundamental symbol of, for all the Hindus, but it's also the elephant, Ganesh. Ganesh. But Ganesh is always shown to be in his paw. He doesn't have a paw, but he always shows his broken off tusk. Ganesh always shows, he's never full tusked. One tusk is broken off. And I think that's clearly a sign of submission to the cow. And what I'm suggesting is the possibility, I haven't written on this, but the possibility that that's the first Indo-European tribe that started to bring in other peoples through a modification in their ancestor worship. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand. I understand. Let me just ask you another thing about kinship. How do people come up, I mean, perhaps we could put it in another way, but let's go with that. How do they come up with kinship systems? I mean, are they influenced by, for example, the ecological conditions they live in, the kinds of economies that they have, food production, something like that?
Right. I think with these ancestral names, that's what I call them, ancestral names. That's what a clan is. Those people sharing the same ancestral name. That allows them to identify many distant relatives. And probably that's the reason, this is really, speculative, but that's the reason maybe why Homo sapiens from Africa replaced all these other homos around. Denisovan, you probably have heard, and of course Homo Neanderthal. And one thing they found about Homo Neanderthals is everything that they have in a little household comes from walking distance, 1 day's walking distance from them. Whereas Homo sapiens in Africa and everywhere else have things that come from many distant places and through trade. And they trade, I think, with kinsmen, distant kinsmen, which suggests that they were successful because they had clan names, ancestor names that they passed down, not just kinship names, which obviously the Neanderthals had, and they had language and they had bigger brains than we did. But maybe they didn't have this one tradition called clan names, ancestor names, that allow you to identify huge numbers of relatives, not just your clan, but the clans, as I say, of all your 4 grandparents, for example, and maybe great-grandparents to 8. So anyway.
Yeah. So in your work you talk about the descendant-leaving strategy model. Does it have something to do with what we've been talking about?
Yes, yeah. I'm saying that we should try to explain widespread traditions by the effect that they have had in the past on increasing descendants of those people that acquired that tradition. It's really Darwinian. I'm really a pure Darwinian here. Darwin first starts off by natural selection. I mean, he got, he was a groundbreaker, and he came up with natural selection, and influenced by Wallace from, it had been working in Indonesia. He came up with natural selection, which he defined as something that would help you survive. You can get food, more food, stuff like that. He got it from Malthus. Malthus was a guy who wrote about food problems, and all animals didn't have enough food, and so the better ones would live and the other ones would die, the ones that could get food. And so Darwin was really influenced by that. And so he started, that's natural selection. That helps you to survive. But of course, nobody survives very long in the world. Unfortunately, I know that now. So after writing his first edition, actually, of Origin of Species, he put in one other thing there that was not natural selection. He created a new kind of selection because he knew that that was reduced survival, but it was somehow widespread, and that's sexual selection. You know, animals banging their heads together and cracking their skulls sometimes, and males fighting with one another. I mean, a male cat often can't live beyond 4 or 5 years because he gets ripped apart by other male cats, unless they're fixed, unless they're clipped, you know. And so Darwin knew that, and so he put in 2 pages, I think it's 2 pages, in his first edition of Origin of Species. And every edition after that increased the pages on sexual selection because he saw that it was really important, and it reduced survival. You see? I mean, it reduced survival. Sexual behavior reduces survival. You know, you spend time on trying to find a mate and fighting other people and all that kind of stuff. And a mother nursing her children, her offspring, a mammal, every mammal, mammary glands, nursing her offspring, that reduces her survival. She's giving energy to her offspring. So the aim of life is not survival. You know, that's the brutal fact. And Darwin realized that as he increased his coverage for sexual selection, and then he started putting in some other things also. That at the moment I can't think of any, but he did put in some things that were also selected for. Okay, so and what's happened? It's really funny. When Darwin came out with Wallace, and they gave that talk to the Linnean Society in England, and I think about 1847 or something right around there, 48 maybe, I don't know. That led to an uproar of the religious people saying that the Bible, implying that the Bible was not true. Went after him for saying that species change. This is Darwin's main message. Individuals in one species may leave descendants in different species. Okay, and so things change during life. They're not fixed. And there was an uproar, but there was also, and this is what recently I've been, looking into, maybe writing a paper about it. There was also this development from Comte. What's his first name? God damn, I can't think of his first name.
August, I think.
Yes. Auguste Comte. Right. That's good. You're on all these things. Yeah. So you can understand. I mean, you're a delight to talk to because you can understand what I'm slinging. Okay.
Auguste Comte was a sociologist, right?
Well, he was influenced by that double name guy. He worked for him for a while, a Frenchman, but I can't remember his name. Damn it, I can't remember his name. But anyway, he developed a religion. People don't realize that. He had 2 main arguments. The first argument was, okay, that's widely kind of accepted by social scientists today. But there's another one called, what the hell is it called? Social or something like that. And that was religious. That was religious. Here, I just was actually looking into this. He was called the high priest of humanity. This is Comte. Okay. When he died, he had a cult.
Yeah.
And his cult gave him money and supported him because he had been fired by the university that he had been teaching at. They couldn't stand him and they got rid of him, and then his followers, and in Brazil, all the way to Brazil, there was a big following in Brazil of Comte, as a religious group. Let's see now, the religion, he founded the religion of humanity in 1849, Comte.
But was this sort of a secular religion?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, well, secular, when it's kind of contradictory, is a religion. I mean, what is a religion? I mean, I've written a book on it, and I think how we identify religion, we don't identify beliefs. Okay, nobody know. I don't know what you believe, and you don't know what I believe, and maybe I don't even know what I believe exactly myself. And so, belief is not the way anybody identifies religious behavior. Okay, we don't say yes, that person is saying this thing that is religious, but we don't know whether he believes it or he doesn't. No matter whether he shivers and cries and all this other stuff, we don't know. We still don't know whether people believe what they're saying or not. You know, we can't. There's no way that I know of telling that. Okay, so so what we have to do is, I think we identify religion by claims that go against our own experiences, and that don't seem to be true on the basis of our experiences. They don't seem to be true. You know, God created the earth, and all this kind of stuff, or souls. There are souls around, and we have a soul that lives on after our death, and so on. Do people believe it? Well, they try hard to stay alive. In general, most religious people are as interested in staying alive as anybody else. And so, but anyway, do they believe it? We don't know. We don't know. Let's put belief aside and look at the religious behavior, which is talk, a certain kind of talk about things that cannot be shown to be true. They might be true. I don't want to say they're not true, but we cannot demonstrate that they're true. It's not like a scientific E equals MC square or something like that. That we can test that. Each one is defined clearly. Each symbol is defined, and we can see whether that's true or not. That's where science is. You make claims that are checkable by our senses, and when they don't check out, we say they're false, and when they keep holding up, well, we say they might be true, and so on. Anyway. So that's what I think distinguishes religion. Certain kind of talk that cannot be shown to be true. Mm-hmm. Okay, and nobody tries to test it in any way. Okay, you can't test it. How do you test whether we have souls or not? In fact, like magic is one kind of activity that's kind of religious. Magic. It says you do this magic and you influence the world in some way. You influence people, or you influence a garden, or you do something like that. But it's easy to test magic. You can say you pray, you do magic for the people occupying even-numbered beds in a hospital, and see if they get better than the people occupying odd-number beds. Easy to test it. Nobody's interested in that. Nobody using magic is. What are you talking about? What the hell are you talking about? They're not interested in testing magic. Which is interesting. It's not. They're not interested in the truth of the statement. They're interested in saying that magic works. Because why? Because we have to look for how that affects other people. And when you do garden magic, you're doing it for everybody who may eat out of that garden, for example. You're showing your efforts going into helping those people, and you're identified that way as being good.
So, and when you talk about that kind of religious talk that you mentioned, does it serve the function of signaling to other people that we are part of a common coalition, let's say?
Well, religions start with Muhammad is one guy, and Jesus is one person. They start that way, which is one person. And I think when Jesus died or was killed, he had 12 members or something like that, and or 12 followers, something like that. Paul became very influential, but he never saw Jesus. He never had any contact with Jesus. Paul, religion starts what we're calling religion. See, I think fundamentally the main religion is ancestor worship. And that may come about with clan names. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe you don't need clan names because people do worship their clan founder. Like the Deer clan people will come and they say that their ancestor of the Deer clan could run very fast. He was a bit like a deer. They say half deer or something like that. But the interesting thing is when you worship your clan ancestor at these big rituals, they're all over the place, in the Hewa, everywhere, Africa, Australia, everywhere. People who are not named by that clan are not in that clan, but whose mother is in that clan or named by that clan ancestor, they'll go there. So sometimes more people who are not named by that clan are attending these rituals, and this is all over the place. I found this with Fortis, he tries to talk about clans and so on in Africa. And so you look at the details, you can see a whole lot of people are there who are not of that clan, but they have a mother's mother of that clan. Well, and I got onto this. I started this by when I was little, and I was brought up in California, and we went to a picnic. When I was just little, my sisters, two sisters, and my parents, we went to a picnic, and they said, "This is the green picnic." And later I said, I wondered about why was it called green, and she said, and my mother told me, well, it's my mother's maiden name. Okay, so I'm a Steadman. She's a Steadman, but she's not even a Green. She's a Bazell, her father's name. She has her father's name. See? So it's 2 links away to a Green, but we were there and we were welcomed as a Green in that ritual of a big picnic for the Green family picnic. That's what they called it. And so probably more people were not Greens there than Greens. In fact, I'd bet money on that, but I don't know. I was 5 years old or something like that. And I think that's everywhere. I mean, I find it in the Hewa, of course, these rituals that are aimed at some clan ancestor, and you always have people who are not of that clan. I think what misled anthropologists is, one, they're coming from a society where kinship only takes you a certain distance. When you go to school, you're not with your kinsman necessarily. You're taught your teacher's not necessarily your kinsman now, and their European society is like that, It's Christian. It's Christian, and you're cooperating with people who are not kinsmen. That's the big thing. You learn to cooperate with people who are not kinsmen. So kinship is diminished. Mm-hmm. Although everybody is supposed to take care of their kids, and their kids are supposed to learn from them, that kind of thing. Cousins are still important, and Thanksgiving, it'll be all kinship. Here Thanksgiving, 2 days from now or something. But anyway, go ahead. I'm just blathering.
No problem. What is the function that myths serve?
Myths are ancestral stories. Okay, they come from ancestors. They're handed down. People learn them, and then they tell them, retell them, and storytellers. That's important in the Hewa. Everybody listens at night. They listen to in the house. There may be over 7, 8, 10, 15 people maybe in a house. Some visitors, and then somebody will tell a story, a myth, And it's funny. I've written a paper on Oedipus, Oedipus, okay, and which was used by Freud as the foundation of his whole approach. Yeah. Okay, and I criticize that. And Levi-Strauss did the same thing. He made it a big deal. Oedipus. He says, different kind of walking lamely, or all this sort of stuff. I don't know if you know about that. And but it's interesting that Freud's argument is that males lust for their mother and they're thwarted by their father, and they hate their father because he doesn't allow them to have sexual access to their mother. Well, the whole thing is absurd. First of all, there's the incest avoidance at that level all over the place among all mammals. For example, you just don't have siblings that are raised together, and your parents or parents. You don't have sexual relationships there. I mean, there are some interesting exceptions. What is her name? Who's the woman in Egypt that killed herself when the Romans were there? I can't remember the name. What's her name? She killed herself. Wrapped herself. She had her wrapped in a rug, and they put her in front of Julius Caesar or something like that. I can't remember. Cleopatra. Okay. Yeah. Cleopatra was the 16th generation of brother and sister reproduction. Wow. But they're not raised together. They're probably raised separately, and then they're married later. I mean, they say when you're raised together in the same household, you just don't have sexual feelings toward one another. Anyway, what I'm saying is, Oedipus did not desire his mother and hate his father because he was being thwarted from his mother. Oedipus, the word itself, means crippled. It's crippled. His foot, it's swollen foot. Literally in Greek, it means swollen foot. Oedipus. Pus is octopus, 8 feet, So why did he have a swollen foot? Because his father ordered a man to take him to the mountainside and bind and put a nail through his ankles and tie his feet together, little baby Oedipus, so that he would die. His father tried to kill Oedipus, and his father, the reason why, do you know the reason why?
No.
Okay. His father seduced a neighboring prince, and had sex with him, and then the gods said, and I don't know how they talk, how all this stuff comes out. The gods told him, because you did that nasty thing, when you have a son, that son will kill you. And so Laius is the father, Laius decided, I don't want my son to kill me. He did have a son, and what I'll do is I'll kill him. In other words, Laius tried to kill Oedipus to save his own neck for a sexual misdeed. Okay. And then Oedipus was taken to Corinth and given to the king and queen of Corinth and raised as their son. And then only when he was 20 or 25 years old, he was told that he was not their son. He found that out in a drinking one night with somebody and said, look, you're not really the son of those two, the king and queen or prince or whatever of Corinth. And he said, oh my God. And then he heard that he was also condemned to kill his father and marry his mother. And he said, oh, I have to leave. So he sacrificed his high position of a prince. He was a prince of Corinth. He sacrificed all that so that he would not kill his father and marry his mother. And on the road going north, then he came across his father, but he didn't know it was his father, and he killed him, because he was being attacked by his father and so on. And then he went on, and then he met the, what is that big Sphinx, the Sphinx. And the Sphinx was causing horribleness in the city. I can't remember the name of the city at the moment. And so Oedipus dared to answer his riddle, and then the Sphinx conveniently killed herself. what goes on 3 legs in the morning, 4 legs in the morning, this kind of stuff. And then he went to, and everybody loved him in, I can't think of the name, not Delphi, it's a name. And then they welcomed him there for saving them. And then he eventually married the queen because the king had been killed somewhere by somebody. They didn't know who. Okay. And then, so my point is this. And then finally, Oedipus did find out what happened. And his wife, mother, killed herself when she heard, oh my God, I'm the mother of that guy, my husband. She killed herself. And then Oedipus said, well, I would like to kill myself too, but I won't because I'll bother my parents, my father and my mother in the afterlife. So he blinded himself. And so then the rest of the plays were how his children, how they dealt with one another, and his 2 sons killed one another, and it's a mess. The point is that Oedipus is about fatherly behavior. It's not about really Oedipus, it's about Laius, his father. And Laius, to save his own neck, his own selfish neck, tried to kill his own son. The opposite of a good father. I've written this up, And so, we'll see. So I don't know if it's being cited, but actually, sometimes I get stuff coming in on the internet, but about somebody's latest interpretation. So Freud was just the opposite of what's going on. He said it was caused by Oedipus. The whole problem was Oedipus, who killed his father. By mistake, he didn't notice his father. Anyway, this is what I'm saying is myths are a mechanism because we have language. Language has been selected for, probably because we have marriage, which leads to fathers, and males become parents, parental care. The other mammals don't have it. They don't have fatherly care. And we get fatherly care, and then we start getting language. With language, we can identify many kinsmen, and through fathers and all this kind of stuff. And here's one of the interesting things about the antiquity or the importance of fatherly care is female hidden ovulation. Understand? Mm-hmm. Our closest relatives have blatant ovulation. The chimpanzees, big red rear end, they just advertise to everybody in sight that they can be impregnated now. Any male that gets to them now can leave descendants. So chimpanzees go as much as they can to leave descendants. They don't, of course, know this, but they just go to have sex with that female. And humans have been just the opposite, completely subdued, hidden. And I think it has to do with marriage. That when you have hidden ovulation, then you're much less likely to be impregnated by some other male than her husband. Mm-hmm. Okay? Because no other male knows when she can be impregnated. And so it reduces rape, because a male is risking a lot in raping a woman, and his chances of impregnating her is about 1 in 30. Mm-hmm. And if she's so hidden ovulation goes along with marriage, I'm sure. All these things, I'm throwing all these things at you because my focus is on really, it's Darwinian. It's leaving descendants is what's being selected for all the time. If any, I'm sure Darwin would fully agree with what I'm saying. If any inheritable elements, that's traditions, help leave descendants, they'll tend to increase in frequency. And if they don't, they tend to die out. So widespread traditions, like using clan names, for example, We have to understand what their function has been, why clans have helped humans, Homo sapiens, leave more descendants than not having clans, clan names, you know, that kind of thing. And hidden ovulation and marriage, all of this stuff is big brains, huge brains. You know, the main cause of death I asked a nurse, a European, actually New Zealander nurse at Copiago, where the airstrip was that I landed at, and it's not in the Hewa, it's on the tribe next to the Hewa. And I asked her, "What's the main cause of death that you face?" And she said, "Women giving birth." Mm-hmm. And I said, "Really? Why is that?" And she said, "Well, they get caught in trying to get birth because we have such huge heads. So our enormous heads, because of our enormous brains, that's what the hell's going on, have a tremendous downside to them at birth, and it can kill the baby and the mother. I have a son whose mother, we went to the hospital, and he couldn't come out. He couldn't fit, and so the doctor said we have to do what do you call it? Cut him open. I can't remember the name. And then right away they cut her open and pulled out my little son and stitched her up, and everything was fine. But he has a big head like mine, you know, and he might well have killed his mother and himself, you know, at birth. I mean, aren't these kind of things really interesting? Don't you think?
Yes.
And anthropologists never talk about them because they talk about this goddamn group causing culture, and even though nobody can ever identify the group. Anyway,
yeah.
Okay.
So
I'll be more succinct from now on.
No, I had just
Dissenter. So you should be kind of attracted to some of the things I'm saying because you can see how dissenter-like they are.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so let me just ask you about one last thing. Since we've been talking about religion and myth and tradition and so on, what is the role that shamans play in society?
Okay. Shamans represent ancestors. In every human society, apparently, before modern religions, before Buddhism, before Islam, before Christianity and Judaism, and Hinduism and so on, before that, everybody worships ancestors. Okay, I've got to remember, what was your question?
I was asking about shamans,
okay.
the role that they play.
Okay, so all these people are worshiping their ancestors, okay? And shaman's role is kind of like a priest, but priests represent a prophet, and they are trained they're very circumscribed because the prophet has said words that get written down, writing. Wow, that's really a big deal. The Old Testament, the New Testament, Hinduism with all those stories and all that kind of stuff. And so shamans are in societies basically that don't have writing. I'm just saying this now. I hadn't thought of that before, but I think that's probably true. Basically, they don't have writing, and so they don't learn how to be a religious leader from the writing. They learn how to be they lead rituals. That's what they do, and including curing rituals, especially curing rituals. People get sick, and then they come in, and then they do these mumbo jumbo stuff, and then they say that they often ask people. This is what they do in the Hewa, I must say. They ask people who broke a food taboo. Isn't that funny? Food taboos are really widespread among humans. You cannot eat this. You can eat this. We all know Jews are like that. They have these. They can't eat pig and a whole range of things. Leviticus is mainly about food prohibitions. food provisions. God, it's just, Leviticus means the laws, and it's the laws against all these. It's not just the pig, but a whole range of things. Well, the Hewa are almost obsessed with food taboos. They can't do this. They can't eat this. Women cannot eat this kind of eggs. Men can't eat this kind of eggs. And I'm trying to, what the hell's going on here? When I went into the Hewa, I had no idea. I did not have this perspective that I'm giving you now at all. I'm not even close. I was basically interested in studying a society that had not been influenced by outsiders at all, and to see if their thought was really different than my thought, because they had different languages and they had not been influenced by outsiders. So it's kind of a linguistic kind of an approach. And the longer I stayed there, and as I learned their language, I became more and more disappointed with that they weren't very different than I am. If I were living in that situation with theirs, more or less, making sweet potato and living mainly and some hunting, that kind of stuff, I would classify the world very much like they classify the world. For example, they classify the bat as a bird, okay, and the cassowary as a wild pig and other animals, okay. And I thought, that's one of the first things I found. I thought, wow, that's what I want. I want to show how different they think. But as I lived with them and hunted with them, and talked to them, I said, look, bats are different than birds. Bats have little mammary glands, and they nurse their offspring. And they said, yeah, that's true. And birds don't do that. They just have to give food to their babies with their beak. And I said, yeah, no, that's true. And I said, look, cassowaries are like birds, but they just don't fly. And I said, yeah, that's true. But the way they hunt them, they hunt bats and birds in a similar way. They'll climb up at night and get in little places, and either get the bats in a cave or arrows sometimes, or shoot the birds that land and nest in certain places. And then they hunt cassowaries like they hunt pigs with a dog. They use dogs, to hunt big animals like that. Kangaroos, they have tree kangaroos, and they use them, dogs, to go after them. So, so the differences that I discovered all started to make sense as I lived with them. They all, like I'm saying now, And so I thought, wow, they don't think differently than I do. They're really like me, And they came to accept me, like a kinsman. Little kids would say, when I'd go to a new house that I hadn't been at before, little kids would come up and say, Grandfather, can I feel your hair on your arm and the hair here? Because their hair is like African hair, really, really tightly curled. And one brave one would do this and say, wow, come feel this, the hair on my arm or the hair on my head. They just, wow, that's it. They just love that. So anyway, I don't know. I wrote out a whole lot of stuff, but I guess answers to your questions. But I don't know if we see. It's not so much. I've written a book on religion. That's true. Supernatural and natural selection, but something like that. And but my real interest is in these things that I've been talking about, why do we have big heads? Why do we have hidden ovulation? Why is there, and those are physical things. Traditions are subject to Darwinian selection. Don't you agree to that, or do you want to argue with that? Traditions are subject to Darwinian selection. I think Darwin would agree immediately.
But and what do you think? What do you think about cultural evolution?
Well, when you define culture as a product of a group, right away, this is just untrue. Culture is not a product of a group. It's from individuals. Even if they're not kinsmen in modern society, even when they're not kinsmen, your particular teacher influences you in school, for example. It's always individual. It's always individual. Until there's television and radio coming along, you almost have no communication between other than personal contact. It's almost all personal contact. So it's not a group phenomenon, and cultural evolution implies groups, and they never can find the group. What's his name in Richardson? I can't remember. I always want to
Peter Richardson and Robert Boyd.
Boyd. See, I always want to get another name for Boyd, but for some reason I can't remember. Boyd and Richardson just assume that it's a group phenomenon, but they don't even know what the groups are. They never, they tried with clans, but the clans are absurd. A lot of anthropologists assume that clans are the group, because part of it is when you go, like where I lived, people would often say, this is a certain clan territory, but when you find the people living there, they're not of that clan. One of the best analysts of kinship is Evans Pritchard, okay, of the newer. And he tries to explain these categories, these named categories of people, and they're really ancestral categories, they're names, and individuals may have 5 or 6 of these names, but they're ancestors of that person, okay? And he concludes in the last chapter of that book, Kinship Among the Newer, he concludes, and I think he's one of the smarter ones, he concludes that these named categories are not groups. He recognizes that. They're not groups. People are scattered all over the place, So why do they have them? They have them because they allow them to think of themselves as being in groups. I mean, that's just, that's a pathetic ending. It allows you to, why do we even want to think of ourselves as being in these groups? Anyway, he doesn't deal with that. But that's his only explanation that he can come up with. He knows they are not groups. And then you take that away, where are the groups? As I say, society, nobody knows what a society is. Tyler defines the study of culture as being a product of a group, of society, And so, I think, I've said this, that why did we get into this situation? Why have we been obsessed with group explanations when there are not these enduring groups? Groups don't endure. Our family, our most important group is probably our household, our family. But that doesn't last. People go in and out and marry in and out and leave, and children are born and people die and all this kind of stuff. And so a household is not an enduring group at all, but it's our most important group probably that we're in, but it's changing all the time. Every time a new child is born, it's a different group. And even sports teams, we like to think of them as being an enduring group because they have a common name, like a soccer team or something, But every time you bring in a new member and you lose a member, it's a new group. There's different relationships that are developed right away. So enduring groups don't exist among humans, I mean, we can say the English-speaking world, is that a group? Australia, New Zealand, Canada, all this kind of stuff. The Spanish-speaking world, Brazil, Portugal and Brazil, you speak a common language more or less. And are you in one group, one society? Nobody knows. Are the Northern Ireland and Southern and the country of Ireland, are they one group or two groups? Nobody knows. Nobody can say. So I don't know. I'm trying hard to convince you.
Yeah, okay. So, Dr. Steadman, let's end the interview here, and thank you a lot for taking the time to come on the show. It was a real pleasure to talk to you.
Well, it's been a pleasure to blather for you to listen to me all this time.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for watching this interview until the end. As you might have noticed, I've started this channel back in February 2018 and have been putting out regular interviews with top academics and scholars from a variety of fields. So to keep the channel sustainable, I would like to ask you to please pay a visit to my Patreon page and to consider making a pledge there. If you prefer PayPal, I also have links to that in the description box of the video. Otherwise, and if you like what I'm doing, please leave a like, share it, and hit the subscription button. I would also like to give a huge thank you to my main patrons and PayPal supporters, Karen Litske and Blanchett Pererga Larsen, Lau Guerrero, Francis Ford, Hans Frederick Sunda, Ricardo Vladimiro, Craig Healy, Adam Kessel, Olaf Alex, Jonathan Wiesel, Anian Kata, Jacob Klinkby, Matthew Whittingbird, Arno Wolf, Tim Hollesy, Henrik Alenius, John Connors, Paulina Barron, Philip Force Connolly, Jerry Mueller, Herbert Gintis, Rutger Voss, Bo Weingard, Rebecca Newberger Goldstein, Dan Demetriou, Robert Windegar, Rui Inácio, Arthur Coe, Zoop, Marco Neves, Colin Holbrook, Susan Pinker, Thomas Trumbull, Bernardo Seixas, Pablo Santurbano, Simon Columbus, Jorge Spinha, Phil Kavanagh, Corey Clark, Mark Blythe, Roberto Inguanzo, Mikkel Stormir, Eric Neumann, Samuel Andreev, Tiago Nunes, Bernard Yugni, Alexander Dunbauer, Omari Hickson, Fergal Cusson, Evan Bodrenko, Hal Herzog, Nuno Machado, Don Ross, João Alves da Silva, Jonathan Librant, Oslam Bullitt, Nathan Nguyen, Stanton T, Samuel Correa, Eric Hines, Mark Smith, J.W., João Eira, Tom Hummel, David Sloan Wilson, Yacila Deza Araújo, Eden Solan, Romain Roach, Dmitry Grigoriev, Diego Londonio Correa, Tom Roth, and Yannick Punter. My producers, Isar Webb, Jim Frank, Lucas Stafiniak, Ian Gilligan, Sergio Codriano, Luís Caetano, Matthew Lavender, Tom Vanegdam, Curtis Dixon, João Linhares, Benedict Mueller, Vega Guidi, Sardas France, and Niruban Balachandran, and my executive producers, Michal Ruzhevsky, Rosie, and James Pratt. Thank you for all.